I just love being up on the rocks. Some people say that height scares them. With me, it's always been kind of the opposite. I like exposure, I like height, I like moving on the rock. I like the challenge. I still like getting out there. I'm Bob Culp, and I'm a rock climber and a mountain climber. I was about 8 years old, and my grandmother and some aunts called me in for an inspection. And one of them said, "Oh, Bobby Dean, what are you going to do when you grow up? You going to be a farmer like your dad?" And I remember saying, "No, I'm going to be a mountain climber." I don't remember why I thought that, but I remember that moment in time, and always after that, I was sure I was going to be a mountain climber. I just hadn't gotten to any mountains yet. I came to Boulder, I think in 1958 to go to the university, or at least that's what my parents thought. In actual fact, I came here because I wanted to go climbing. I bought a book on mountaineering, and it was written in around the turn of the century, probably, and was hopelessly out of date. But I didn't realize that. It was the only book I'd ever seen about how to climb. I learned to climb by going out and climbing. Didn't have any equipment, didn't have climbing shoes, but I didn't know there were any climbers here in Boulder. I knew there were rocks to climb, but I didn't know there were climbers. Leighton was one of the first guys that I ever climbed with, and surely one of the best. He was a force of nature. Physically, he was a big, strong guy, but mentally, he was way above everybody else. I had a friend that I'd met who was kind of a climber. His name was Tom Haig, and he said, "Oh, you know, Bob, you should meet this guy, Leighton. Cora, my girlfriend, knows him." So we set up a date. We went up to Estes Park together, all four of us to go climbing. On the ride up there, I was talking to Leighton and discovered that he and I had a lot of the same feelings about climbing. And after that, I climbed with him regularly. After going to school for a number of years, I was in engineering physics, and I was more interested in climbing and doing a lot more climbing, and I decided that, well, I'll take a year off and just see where it leads me. I guess I hadn't thought that out too well because it led me into the Army. I got drafted, so I had to spend a couple years in Army intelligence. I kind of lucked out there, but I was back in Arlington, West Virginia, and all I could think about was getting back to Boulder so that I could continue climbing. Came back to Boulder, started climbing again, and I needed to find a job, so I ended up working at the Bureau of Standards in an ionospheric studying group, which was very boring. I decided at that point that I'm not going to be able to continue doing that, so I quit and decided I was going to be a climbing guide. Before long, I discovered that you couldn't make a living doing that. So I went to work at the Alpine House, which is a ski shop on Broadway and University. And they decided that they needed something in the summer, so I opened a climbing department. The controller came around one day and said, "Bob, just a heads up, we're going out of business." He said, "Would you be interested in any of the inventory?" And I thought, well, I don't know, let me think it over. I had about $1,200 that was coming to me from the government. So the next day I told the controller, "Well, I'll give you $1,200 for that." And he said, "Oh, no, that's not nearly enough." And I said, "Well, okay, but tell the owners." So he did. He came back the next day and said, well, they agreed, so you've got it. And Al's barber shop, just around the corner, had gone out of business. So there was an empty space. I moved around there and thought up a name, called it the Boulder Mountaineer. I didn't know anything about running a business, but I thought, well, how hard can it be? So I started, and I guess I did probably everything possible to make it fail. But in spite of my efforts, it was successful. I just had the idea I wanted to try running a retail store. So I expanded in the shopping center where we were, and eventually moved into a building that we built on the corner of Broadway and University. I first learned of La Sportiva through a friend of mine that I had met in the Dolomites climbing, Aldo Leviti, and he worked for La Sportiva. I invited him to come over and visit us, which he did, and La Sportiva sent some of their product with him to show to me in the store, and it was all kind of leather boots, and he had some rock climbing shoes that were pretty out of date. So I wasn't too interested, but I bought some things from him. Then later on, I got this box in the mail. I opened it up, and there was a pair of rock climbing shoes, and they looked pretty good, and they had sticky soles, which was all the rage then. And I went up on Flagstaff to go bouldering, and was impressed. So I got back to this shop and called over to the university and asked if there was anybody who would come and translate. I wanted to make a phone call to Italy. We called La Sportiva, and I told them that I saw their shoes, I tried them out, I think they were really good. Would they like to have a U.S. distributor? And they thought, oh, a U.S. distributor. Well, yeah. So I got on the plane, flew over. We talked and set up an agreement so that I would be the distributor for La Sportiva. You know, the La Sportiva shoes were really, I think, the best shoes at the time. We started selling them, and they became very popular. And we continued distributing them for several years until La Sportiva started their own company here in the United States. You know, I've done thousands of climbs. I can't pick a favorite one. Well, maybe I can. When Tex and I did the Culp Bossier, I remember at the top of the pitch that we described as the nose, that had been so much fun because, you know, I'd never been climbed. I was pretty confident that I could climb it because you could climb pretty much anywhere on Hallis, but you never know. And there was no protection. At the end of that pitch, I realized that that's just about the most fun I've ever had climbing.